everyone, and welcome to another video. I'm Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off all of the manga that I got for this past month of September. Quite a bit here. So much Kodansha. But rather than spend too long on this intro, I'll get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. Figure this month, holy crap! This is from something that no one will know, but that's fine. So I got this figure. She is a 1/7 scale of Zashiki Warashi from the mobile game on Myoji, which is, I know everyone's playing Genshin Impact. I know everyone's got their mobile games that they're into. I don't care. I love Onmyoji. It's very much my shit. And this is a character, or Shikigami, that I have. I have this particular skin for her. When I saw that NetEase was doing a figure for her, I kind of immediately fell in love. I love the koi fish. I just love everything about it. It's so cute. It's so good. It's a 1/7 scale, so it's a little bit larger than NetEase figures tend to be, but I believe it's the same scale as my one of my other Onmyoji figures, which is my Otengu Jr. from Mythos. So I have two 1/7 scale figures for this franchise, and I have one 1/8 scale. Which is Miketsu, which is the girl with the foxes and the art, like the archery. On Myoji. Again, nobody, like literally none of you watching are playing it. Probably. It's certainly not one of the more popular. Well, I would say it is popular, but I would say it's not necessarily popular within like English mobile game fandoms. Certainly not to the level of something, like the Fate stuff, or Fate Grand Order, or Genshin, or anything else that everyone else seems to be playing. But I don't care, because I like yokai, and every so often a company, normally a Chinese company, because it is a Chinese game, despite being a very Japanese influence setting and characters, will make a beautiful figure, and I will buy it. I don't think I have any other. No, that's a lie. I think I might have at least one other Onmyoji figure that I've pre-ordered. There's others that I'm also watching. There's also others that I'm wanting to get. My sister has like 5 on pre-order. We really like our Onmyoji in this household, and she turned out beautifully. I just love all of the little details. This month I got a fanzine, actually. Surprising. Not that surprising. I do buy fanzines from time and doujin from time to time, but this is from a franchise that I love. Longtime viewers, subscribers, will know how much I adore this series, both the anime and the light novel. It's one of my favorite ongoing titles right now. And when I found out about this particular project, I was like, hey, I want to get that, and thus I did. So this is Guns N' Roses, a Baccano zine, which obviously is full of artwork featuring the characters from various artists from Baccano. I like these two in particular, same character, but just the fact that it's not all just the really well-known characters from the franchise, i.e. the ones that were in the anime. It's nice to see some novel exclusive characters getting some love in this fanzine which is, I think, indicative of being made by, like, people who do actually follow the larger franchise, which obviously, like, I'm not gonna be gatekeeping that, you know, you're not a real fan if all you've ever seen is the anime. That's not my point. My point is that it's cool to see Christopher, and it's cool to see Sylvie just living their lives, being in some artwork, because as much as I love everyone, you know, obviously certain characters get a lot more of the spotlight because, one, they deserve it, but two, you know, they were in the anime versus just having been in the light novels. I think Maria's in this as well. It's just got a whole bunch of good characters. But yeah, completely a art fanzine. There's no fan fiction or anything in this, which I typically prefer, to be perfectly honest, although as someone who is, my artistic tendencies lean towards the written word versus, you know, the illustrative. I don't participate in fanzines aside from buying them anyway, but like I can see value in having fic writers and fanfiction included. I just don't read them half the time when they're included in fanzines. I don't know, not because they're bad, but because I just like looking at pretty pictures. I'm very if I want to read a fic, I'll search for one, if that makes sense. But yeah, Guns N' Roses, a Baccano zine. An art book this month. Not for anything in particular, just a collected art book of certain creators or single artists, you know, pieces. I know nothing about this artist, but I fell in love with their style when I had been aware of this art book for a little while, and so I finally bit the bullet and got my own copy. This is Light by Re Degrees? I don't know. Look at the, oh my god. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. How can you not? How can you not just fall in love? I am awestruck with every page. Legitimately, the entire book is breathtaking. I mean, light is, of course, the biggest theme here. The way that it's, you know, highlighting things, the way that it colors and illuminates each piece is just, oh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. What can I say to this? Nothing is the answer to that. I'm saying quite a bit considering I'm speechless, but I am so happy with this art book, and I think it is just a testament to the sort of quality that you can find with independent artists' works. Insofar as what I mean is, like, there's great value in art books that aren't just namely related to, you know, anime or manga franchise. Obviously, right? Like, that shouldn't be a surprising opinion or comment, but I think sometimes when you are in a niche or a smaller fan community or bubble, kind of kept to what you know, you can sometimes overlook some of the other amazing, beautiful additional things out there. And I'm just so glad I finally took the time to order my own copy of this, because yeah, I'd been wanting it for a long time. I'd seen some pieces in it before, obviously preview works, and even the cover is just gorgeous, but it's even better than I expected. It is worth every penny, and I would buy it 3 times over, honestly. It's, yeah, it's a collection of their artwork from 2014 up until this year. So very, contemporary, very up to date. And it kind of makes me sad because I want more, right? That's of course me being greedy. But man, oh man, if this artist releases another art book somewhere down the line, you know that I will be buying it, because how can you not? How could you not? I'll stop gushing now about this, but I'm just completely in love with this book. Completely and utterly head over heels. So yeah, Light by Re Degrees. That I hear, did I get merch? I absolutely got merch this month. So many clear files. Guys, I have a clear file problem. Like an actual problem. I need to cool it on the clear files. And it's not just my typical free bullshit either. So I got the entire set. The entire set of the recently released Haikyuu clear files. I just really like the artwork on these, and in a similar sense to, well, Free, I love all of the characters in Haikyuu, so how could I not? So we have Hinata, and just typical background art on the back. There's Kageyama. We have Kenma. And Kuro. We have Oikawa. And Iwazumi. We have Bokuto. And finally, Akashi. So, majority of the main characters from each team, obviously, like, it's missing some. It's not a complete collection of all of the millions of characters, or all of the dozens of teams featured in Haikyuu, but they're all good boys. They're all really pretty pieces of character art as well. I just really like them. They're very dynamic, and obviously with, Albajo size a little bit different, but all of them having their animal from their school. It's just a really fun collection. I got these, I was going to get them from Ami Ami, but then I discovered that there was a store selling them locally. So I purchased them from there, so I didn't have to, it was maybe a little bit pricier all up for the actual, items themselves, but it meant that I didn't have to pay for international shipping, which of course is crazy right now. So anything to avoid that, really. Of course, it wouldn't be a Simply G haul video if I didn't have my free merchandise as well. So continuing with this year's birthday event merchandise, which is the Thanks birthday, our special day, we have Nagisa, whose birthday is in August. We have Natsuya, whose birthday is in August as well, later on. These are all August boys. Actually, fun fact, Natsuya's birthday is also my dad's birthday. That's how I always remember. And then now, who again his birthday is in August, and is 1 week exactly from Natsuya's. So you have their cute chibi designs on the back as well. Oh, they're so cute. So we have those, and then of course we have the other on my day off. Hashtag on my day off. Clear files. So we have Ikuya, a very lovely purple setup there, and of course the sunset beach, which has, you know, been a staple for these so far. And then of course with Ikuya we have to have Hiyori, who's got a very... Oh, he's on a rooftop cinema. Oh, hell yeah. Actually, I've been to one of these and it actually looks like the one that I've been to. I didn't even realize that he was on the rooftop cinema. I thought he was just like in somewhere cool with the city skyline. Maybe it's an outside cinema, not a rooftop cinema. That would make more sense. It looks cool though, either way. And then of course, the beach. And he has a plane, an aquaplane, like the ones that can land on water. That's pretty cool. You can tell I haven't looked at these since I've gotten them. But yeah, fun, exciting, nice to have. Kyoto Animation, once again, knows how to get my money. And I will continue to give them my money, as has been the case for 8 years at this point. I think 8 years, which is horrifying. Oh my god. So the only debut for this month, the only book, well, it's actually one and done, so it's like only one single volume, highly anticipated, super exciting, beautiful release, and this is Moto Hagio's Little Leo, released by Dempa. This is a nice little book, flexibound, so it's kind of this not quite hardcover, not quite soft cover, which you may be familiar with if you have previously purchased Dementia 21, or Ping Pong also has a flexibound cover. This is a collection of short chapters about the smart and charming tomcat Leo as he goes on various adventures around the town and trying to learn more about himself and the people and cats around him. It's very, very cute. Definitely one for Hagio fans, definitely one for cat manga fans or cat fans just in general. It has somewhat of a similar vibe, although presented in a completely different way, of something like Junji Ito's Yon and Mu, that his cat diary manga. Definitely give it a shot. You can see how much Hagio loves Little Leo, her actual cat. And so it's nice to just kind of discover a creator through their pet as well and see how they perceive their relationship with them. It's a good time, very sweet. It was super exciting when Dempa announced this, namely if only just because it was interesting in seeing another publisher outside of Fantagraphics license some Hagio manga. And I hope it leads to further diversification. But Dempa definitely never disappoints. I really enjoy a lot of their titles, and I'm looking forward to many more in the future. Really, we only have one ending or final volume for this month. But is it a big one? Yes, indeedy. Oh my goodness. So I got the final volume of Haikyuu, volume 45 by Haruichi Furudate. This is the now completed, in both Japanese and English, series about a volleyball player throughout his high school years and a little bit into the future, and the various people around him, the various ways that volleyball has impacted their lives, the various ways that they've grown and connected with each other through the sport and through their shared passions, and through the game, they're just there's gumption. I don't know. I wax poetic about Haikyuu every single time I get a volume, but this is the last time I'll be getting a volume, so bear with me. Haikyuu is by far one of my favorite Shonen Jump titles I've ever experienced, and that's including a lot of the very popular ones, a lot of the very popular sports Jump titles that I've read. It really doesn't quite compare to anything else, namely in so far as it's not a wholly unique series. It has a lot of the tropes and expectations of what a good shonen sports series is and should be, and it never completely like reinvents the wheel, but the way that things are presented, the genuine passion that Furuta has for their characters, for the game of volleyball, considering they weren't necessarily a huge volleyball fan themselves, it's just incredible that this story got to become what it is. The amount of just such captivating and charming and interesting characters. I've said this before, and I do hate comparing series to other things, especially because I don't think it's necessarily all that fair. I think each series has its own faults and merits, but if you are to do a comparison, I always have the real point in saying that a lot of the times sports series, and shonen sports series in particular, where there's a lot of team members, I'm not a huge team sports fan anyway. I don't follow a lot of team sports. I play even fewer of them, and so the fact that a team will normally have half a dozen up to a dozen players means that there's a lot of characters, a lot of individuals who have to exist in some capacity. When we're talking about sports series, in addition to that, we also have not only your main characters, who may be very memorable, who may be fairly easy to follow and fairly distinct from each other, there's also a multitude of rival schools, rival teams, etc., which then also have to have very strong personalities, have to stand out from each other, have to be memorable, and very often that can not, I don't find that effective in many series, whether it's just because they don't leave much of an impression, whether that's because their personalities are all very samey, or whether it's because none of them act like teenagers. They more so act like cartoon villains, especially when we're talking about rivalries. Haikyuu never had that problem. All of these characters feel like teenagers. They feel like normally motivated kids. They don't have any grand scheme. They don't have outside of the normal sort of grand scheme of teens, but they don't have any rival teams are all fleshed out and very memorable, with majority of their players as well. And they don't feel like there's an evil school, or that we're definitely rooting against one particular team, because it's very clear from very early on that these are all just kids, people who love the sport that they're playing. They've put in effort and time and training and hard work to do the best that they can, and sometimes that pays off. Sometimes it's proof to the amount that they've worked, and sometimes it there isn't that. Like, there always has to be winners and losers in sports. That's how they work. And the largeness of failing, or the largeness of losing, in the grand scheme of things as well, is so very often in sports manga shown as the end, shown as kind of the heartbreaking thing to overcome. And obviously, like, in a sport, you want to win, but what Haikyuu has managed to do over the course of its serialization and syndication, I guess, has shown that win or lose, it's less about that and more so about enjoying the moment, enjoying the game whilst you're playing, enjoying the tactics, enjoying the teamwork, enjoying the people you're playing with, enjoying the people you're playing against, and that appreciation for not only your own skills, your own improvement, but the people around you, and learning from each other and respecting each other. It's just so incredibly well done. I also really love and congratulate and celebrate that Haikyuu allows its characters to grow, to age, to mature past the point of, first year of high school. Because man, oh man, I sure would not want to be my 15-year-old self for my whole life. And so just by doing that, just by allowing that to happen, there's so much more of a organic growth of personality, organic growth of skill, and personal connections. I love Haikyuu. I don't think I have ever made a secret of that. I, like a lot of people, found it through the anime. I watched the first season when it was airing and kind of fell in love with it at that point. When the manga was licensed, it was a must-buy for me. I was following it as soon as all of the chapters kind of caught up to date with, backlog of chapters caught up to date with the current chapters, thanks to the Shonen Jump, app. And it was one of the first series that I caught up with on that. And it's a series where, for the first time, I was able to experience the ending, the finale, in real time, along with everyone else. Everyone else who wasn't reading scans, at least, across the world, including Japan. And see the final chapters, see the finale itself as soon as possible, and experience that. And for those who don't know, Haikyuu ended early 2020, which, if you're paying attention, might be pretty indicative. Early 2020? Mid 2020. We were in the midst of pandemic life. There wasn't a lot of hope to be found. People were dying. Society in it of itself across the world was going into lockdown. People were losing their jobs, their homes, their family. There just wasn't a lot of security, or there's a huge amount of unsurety for the future. And I mean, to this day, we're still in the pandemic. Obviously, we are in a different position than we were a year ago. But for a period that seemed so hopeless, that seemed very full of fear and sadness and confusion and isolation from family and friends and partners and the people that we care about. Haikyuu was, in a weird way, just a very hopeful spot and continued to be extremely consistent in being not only positive and hopeful, but in successful in celebrating how people relate to each other and interact with each other and the value of human connection, whether it be through sport or through whatever else your personal passions may be. And I think it was such a different and wonderful thing to experience amidst all of the other bad news, right? Everything else in the world was a mess, but Haikyuu was it just kept being what it was and what it has always been. And in a weird way, Furuta has said in interviews that they didn't really have a plan insofar as certain characters, insofar as how things would pan out for the story, which is kind of incredible considering how perfectly everything seamlessly fits together. And I think that's maybe just a good indication of how acutely attuned Furuta is to the human condition, is to how people interact with each other, how kids interact with each other, how adults interact with each other, how adults interact with kids. I think there was something interesting in experiencing the almost phenomena of Haikyuu in its ending stages, having been a fan, having followed the series for so long, having loved the characters, and having such a wonderful and satisfying finality to the ending as well, is just, it's so good. Unlike certain other Jump titles or certain other popular titles, I don't worry that there's going to be 12 spin-offs or, a next generation of characters to be following. I think that Furuta is done with this story insofar as with the manga. I'm sure that the light novels have wrapped up as well. There's the spin-off, I think like a comedy gag manga, which I think is also finished up or is quite close to finishing. So it's kind of done and dusted. But it's one of those series that is endlessly rereadable, even if you know what's coming, even if you know what to expect, even if you remember story beats. The characters themselves are so fun to spend time with that, it's hard to stay away, if that makes sense. It's one of those that I will never worry about having on my shelves, having in my collection. Is never one I would second guess about owning and wondering if I would reread it in the future, because the answer is yes, wholeheartedly yes, overwhelmingly yes. And that's not going to be the case for everyone, of course, but I would argue that Haikyuu was one of the best titles in Jump in an era where there is a lot of very strong titles in Jump. It was and has been my favorite of recent titles. It's not my only, series that I enjoy from Jump, but it is my favorite of recent years. And there's not too much that I've been reading from Jump recently that has really threatened that. Although the new sports romance is also very good, but very different as well. But yeah, Haikyuu, if you haven't tried it, do. It's available in its entirety on the Shonen Jump app. You can stream all of the seasons of anime on various platforms, including Crunchyroll, I believe. Sentai's put out the discs for the first 3 seasons. I would like to hope that we may see some of the other supporting stuff from Viz, like the light novels, like the gag manga one day. Although it is somewhat of a long shot, I still feel. But yeah, Haikyuu is wonderful, and I'm both incredibly happy and somewhat saddened by the fact that this story has yet again come to an end. So next we have the ongoing manga. And the first of these is a book that I'm sure many people have gotten or will be receiving shortly. And that is volume 8 of the deluxe edition of Berserk. This collects volumes 22 to 24 of the single volumes. This is Dark Horse's release or re-release of Kentaro Miura's dark fantasy. Berserk really doesn't need any sort of introduction. I think everyone knows this extremely hyper-violent, twisted, but intriguing and ultimately hopeful, and I don't know how to quite phrase it. This story about human survival and overcoming trauma, overcoming the past, facing your demons both physically or literally and metaphorically. It's hugely popular, hugely influential. I don't think I'm introducing this series to a new audience. I think everybody knows the series. I'm enjoying this part of the story. I know that certain arcs, I don't know if this is one of them, but I know that certain arcs people kind of dislike. I know certain, like the beginning with the Band of the Hawk and all of those elements was such an initial high point for a lot of people that I think maybe the switch in tone or the switch in focus and introduction of new characters and that later on in the series may have kind of some people might not enjoy that. I really do like the expansion of the cast. I like all of the new characters that are introduced. I like how this fantasy story presents itself and all of the characters, how they interact within the story and within the world that they occupy. So I've said this before, I will say it again. I'm not like the biggest die-hard be-all end-all fan of Berserk. It was a series that I avoided, not so much because of the series itself, but more so because of the fans and how they spoke about it for years. And it wasn't until the unfortunate passing of Miura earlier this year that I decided to give the series a second try, really like a proper go. I had read a couple volumes previously, 5 or 6 years ago, and wasn't super intrigued or wasn't hooked by what was going on really. So I put it aside, not necessarily in like a I will never read this, because I don't personally have an issue with like violence or even sexualized violence. It takes a lot to ruffle my feathers, as it were. But obviously this is not a story for the faint of heart. And obviously it's dependent on how a series presents those themes as well, which I will say for all of Berserk's, hardcore themes and content, they're always presented in a negative light. It doesn't sexualize its violence, or that sort of thing. So, yeah, anyway. It wasn't until Miura's passing that I heard people speak about this series in ways that I hadn't experienced before. And I think it's mainly because, obviously, with the death of a creator, people become more reflective of their work. They become a little bit more analytical as to why their art, or whatever the case may be, has been so influential or affecting. And it was those opinions, those reviews, those personal anecdotes and reflections of the story that really encouraged me to try the series again. So in order to do that, I picked up the first two of these deluxe editions, and with the expectation of, if I dislike it as I did the first, or it wasn't the first time, or if I wasn't feeling it, then, no harm, no foul. It's always able to find people willing to pay for Berserk. That's not a big issue. It would find a new home almost immediately, probably. But luckily for me, and happily, maybe, I did really enjoy it. It did capture my attention more so than it had previously, and now I am kind of in it for the long haul. If we consider or assume that volume 41, 42 is the final volume for Berserk, if Studio Gaga does not continue the series, then there will be 14 of these volumes in its entirety, so we are more than halfway through. But it's all a little bit up in the air as to whether or not Berserk will continue in some fashion. There's been kind of rumors or speculation that his team of assistants will continue the story, just because there are extensive story plans and outlines. Obviously, they have an extensive history with Berserk and the characters, in order to continue and complete the story that Miura wanted to tell and will become, or has become, his legacy. But, we don't know. That's all still, I think, a lot of fans, perhaps, unrealistic hopes. Yeah, we'll see. As I said, I'm not up to date. I don't know where the series is going. I am enjoying it. I know maybe this part people aren't that interested in. I don't know. I know that there's certain arcs that fans aren't super keen on compared to others, which is just sort of the way that longer manga tend to go. But I'm enjoying it. I like all of the new characters. I like the little group of quirky misfits that seem to be drawn to Guts. I'm enjoying Guts' character progression and his personal growth over the course of the series as well. So, it's Berserk. It's good. I don't think anyone needed to be told that. But it's also certainly not a series for everyone, and I wouldn't recommend it necessarily in a blanket way. I'd say that, figure out what you're wanting, and if you don't like it, then, that's fine. The only standard size manga in my continuing series. This is volume 15 of Snow White with the Red Hair by Sorata Akiduki. Obviously the most recent volume of this shoujo series about a court herbalist and her relationship with the second prince of the kingdom where she is residing, their relationship, her relationship with the other people around her, other court herbalists, her personal bodyguard, the Zen, the prince's personal bodyguards, or guards maybe, just generally. It's great. I love this series. These chapters are focusing on Shiryuki's time in the north, separated from Zen. It's just her, Nobi, and Ryu doing research on a particular flower mineral thing. They're doing some interesting research. Obviously not anything close to realistic, but it's nice to see these characters have personal goals and achievements outside of each other, which can be somewhat of a rarity in romance-focused manga. And I mean, this does have romance, and this is a romance manga, and their romance does feature a lot, or the romantic relationship does feature a lot, but I would argue that the larger plot is more so about Shiryuki as a character and her relationship with not only Zen, but the people around her and herself, and how she grows as a person and in her career and finds the value in herself. It's wonderful. I love Snow White with the Red Hair. It's super good. It is another longer one. I think there's 23 or 24 volumes out in Japanese, so we are slowly catching up in English. I say slowly, we get a volume of this every 2 or 3 months, so we are quite quickly catching up. And I'll be sad when we catch up for reals, because then we'll have to wait a long time, like in Japan. But I do recommend it. It's, I'm quite picky with a lot of the longer series that I follow. There's not too many titles that I continue with that are past even 15, 20 volumes. And so it's one that I really have to be very excited and adamant about to continue. So this and of the Dawn and Noragami, which is completely different but is longer. Hunter x Hunter, Skip Beat is another shoujo beat title that's long, that I love. For me to be yes, I must have this and dedicate shelf space to it, because I just don't have that much shelf space anymore, unfortunately. But this has been a wonderful series, and I always look forward to the new volume. On to the large trim manga, and that's everything else. Aside from my BL, that's everything else. So first we have the next volume, maybe, of Shinichi Fukuda's My Dress Up Darling, Volume 4. This is a romantic comedy ecchi about high schoolers trying to create cosplay. The girl who wants to cosplay all of her favorite characters, and the guy who helps her make the costumes. I love the series. It's fun. It's funny. I love how much it it celebrates cosplay as like something fun and something you should be enjoying, as something that is for everyone. It's a good time. I'm sometimes critical of series that are extremely ecchi. But I find this is quite a fun balance. It's really funny. I really like the main characters. They're dynamic. They're maybe romantic relationship. We're not quite sure what's happening there. Feelings are obvious, but as to the clarity of them telling each other feelings, then that's not that's a work in progress. But it's a good time. I always find it very funny, very likable, very true to life teens, how they interact with each other, how they speak to each other. Really quality, like amazing translation job, honestly. And it's one that I continue to have a lot of fun with. Even if you're not necessarily a fan of like super, what this isn't, it is ecchi. There is a lot of fan service in it. And again, I don't hate fan service. I don't think it's, the worst thing in the world. But I do think that this series plays with its fan service quite well. It's not overly distracting. It lends a cheekiness to the series that is, again, pretty typical of teens. Because, teenagers, they want to look particular ways, and present them themselves in particular ways. So it tracks. It feels very realistic, but it's also just really funny. Really, really funny. They're a bunch of good kids. I'm a bit leery on the middle schooler who looks like a 25-year-old, woman, and then her older sister who looks like a 8-year-old. That's always not the greatest, but I will say that they're not like the worst characters ever either. They're quite interesting characters. I think their dynamic is really interesting. Their relationship, again, with each other and then also with cosplay, is really well done. It also allows the series to highlight the difference that body type and things like height or weight or whatever can impact on how people cosplay or how people perceive themselves as cosplayers. It's really good. It's really good, and I think that's kind of an important discussion that in the cosplay community does get brought up, but cosplay can and has been a very... cosplay can be wonderful, right? Like, ultimately, cosplay is something that anyone can do, and hopefully you're of the opinion that, it's an outlet to become a character that you really enjoy. You don't necessarily have to be like a professional costumer or to 100% perfectly match a character. As long as you're having fun, as long as, you're enjoying yourself, you're doing your best, you're not hurting anyone, you're not, going out there to, wreck anyone else's day, then, as, anyone and everyone can cosplay. But unfortunately, cosplay can and has very often at times become a very toxic community as to like who people gatekeeping who can and can't cosplay certain characters, in regards to gender, race, sexuality, body type. There's a huge amount of racism, fat phobia, stuff like that, which is also, for as wonderful as cosplay can be, it's also important to recognize that there are some extremely terrible and biased parts of the community, and hateful parts of the community, and I think that this series broaches it. It acknowledges aspects of that, not necessarily with the nuance that you would see in internet, like in real life or social media international discussion about these things. And we'll see how things go with this series, especially with this upcoming character that she's wanting to cosplay. But so far, it's still been a really fun time, and I do encourage you to try My Dress Up Darling if you haven't, because, yeah, despite everything else, the main characters and their relationship, they're just so sweet. They're good kids, and I want only the best for them. So next we have a vertical manga, and this is volume 16 of What Did You Eat Yesterday by Fumi Yoshinaga. This is an ongoing food manga about a gay couple in Tokyo, an older gay couple, sort of in their midlife, and their families, their work, sort of just their day-to-day lives, and then the meals that are like exist within those time frames. We have Shiro, who is the main chef of the two. He's not a chef, he's a lawyer, but is very hyper vigilant about his personal health and well-being, as well as his personal finances. So he has developed a very keen set of skills when it comes to cooking and home cooking. And his long-term partner Kenji, who is a hairdresser, who's a little bit more frivolous, isn't that strict about diet or spending or anything else. And so it's a sweet story about this odd couple, their lives together, the meals that they share. And one thing I really enjoy about What Did You Eat Yesterday is that a lot of times with food manga, even the really popular ones, there's an element of the cooking being presented as like a professional quality. I'm really cynical about food manga that is just, oh yes, this is a fantasy land, and I give these fantastical creatures Japanese food and it's the greatest thing they've ever tasted. I'm like, oh wow, that doesn't sound vaguely nationalistic whatsoever. I'm not super keen on those sorts of things. It feels kind of colonize-y-ish. Further to that, or additionally to that, the other type of food manga a lot of times is like featuring a cafe or featuring recipes that are outside of the norm for like a beginner chef or someone who's just trying to learn how to cook, which I think a lot of people use food manga to get interested in food preparation and making meals for themselves. So I don't think that should be necessarily how we encourage people to do things. What I really like about What You Eat Yesterday is that Shiro, he doesn't like to waste food. He doesn't like to waste money even more. He's wonderful at creating meals out of ingredients that he already has, making big batches and freezing things, adapting recipes with whatever he has on hand, not going to the extra effort not going out of his way to make something that does require an extra ingredient that might be expensive and might be unusual and they not use very often. It feels a lot more like the sort of cooking that you come across if you are learning like from family, right? If you watch your mother or father or grandmother or whomever, Yeah, it's something that is more indicative of like learning how to cook from a parent or grandparent or a family member, um, and is a little bit more reflective of quote unquote normal people's experience. Um, I don't think that it's wrong to teach people how to be, thrifty with cooking. It's actually really an amazing skill if your mother can make a new meal out of 4 different sorts of leftovers, or if your grandmother knows how to make a particular dish without even having to think about a recipe. She just does it by feel. Or if your uncle has a secret sort of recipe that only he can put together, and it's using really basic ingredients, but just the way that he puts it together makes it that much more special. There's something really amazing about home cooking that sometimes gets lost when a food manga is focusing just on how to fit in all of the most like important cultural foods of Japan, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, so it's why I personally appreciate What Did You Eat Yesterday more compared to some of the other really popular food titles. And I highly recommend it, not only as a Fumi Yoshinaga title, but just as a food manga in general. And yeah, check it out if you have not. Next, we have Volume 10, the most recent volume of Hell's Paradise Jigoku Raku by Yuji Kaku. This is, there's 12 volumes to the series. We are heading towards the end. This is an action series about a group of death row inmates who are sent to a weird island full of monsters in order to get a elixir of youth, or elixir of eternal life, in exchange for a formal pardon. And each criminal is accompanied by an executioner, and their story of survival. I love this series so much. Since day one, this was the series that I was following digitally, thanks to Manga Plus. And then when Viz licensed it, I was super excited to get the print edition. I have encouraged many friends to try this, and some of them even decided to try this, and are enjoying it a lot. It's great if you do like action, creepy monsters, found family. It has a lot of like Tokyo Ghoul or Dora Hedoro vibes. It's not as like violent, like hyper violent as Dora Hedoro, but it is more violent, or to the same level as of violence as Tokyo Ghoul, I would argue. But they all three of those sort of have a similar vibe of like found family and characters, an unlikely motley crew of heroes who aren't necessarily good people, but you love them and you care about them all the same. Man, Hell's Paradise is so good. And hopefully I can encourage people to try it, especially as we're heading into the final volumes. It's only 12 volumes altogether. So give it a try if you haven't yet. It is very, 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 very good. Everything else is Kodansha. I got so much Kodansha manga. First up is Volume 9, the most recent volume of Drifting Dragons by Taku Kuwabara. Another food manga, actually. Fantasy food manga about a group of dragoneers on a airship who hunt dragons sort of as their job, but it's mainly a travelogue style of story exploring this fantasy world wherein humans and dragons sort of coexist, not really coexist. It's beautiful, fantastical. I really enjoy the pacing and atmosphere of this one. I think it, although it is about like dragon hunting and there is, valid criticism to compare the depiction of that to like historical whaling, which obviously is not a good thing and was never a good thing and is sadly still practiced in Japan. So that's a perfectly valid criticism if you're wanting to avoid this one. But I find that it's more so along the lines of something like Golden Kamui, where although it an aspect of it is about hunting, it's also about having respect for that hunted animal and using every part of it and showing respect to the creature that it was and to the life that it had by using that to its fullest potential. So, there's a bit of a yin and a yang there, and it's up to you as to whether or not certain aspects affect you more or less. I really enjoy this series. As I said, I think it's very beautiful. I love the atmosphere of it. And I still haven't watched the anime adaptation, but it's on Netflix. I heard literally nothing about it, so I don't know if it's good, bad, or whatever. But yeah, Drifting Dragons, give it a shot. It was one that I followed, or I tried digitally first, thanks to a Humble Bundle, actually. And then when it transitioned to print, I was very happy and decided to start picking them up. So yeah, I mean, not anything super different from the previous 8 volumes, or my opinions haven't changed on those yet, or at all. So if you've seen me talk about the series, the sentiment is the same. So we have volume 4 of Blue Period by Subasa Yamaguchi. This is an ongoing drama manga about art and artists and the professional art world. Our main character, his growth as an artist, his self-actualization as an artist. I really love this series. It's a celebration of passions and how difficult it can be sometimes when you are following or pursuing something that is incredibly important to you, and how art reflects its creator, how it reflects society, and how it reflects the audience, the interpretation from everyone who sees that piece of artwork. It's beautifully written, beautifully done. It's definitely a new favorite from Kodansha's catalog. It has a upcoming anime adaptation which starts in a week-ish, I believe. So I would expect that will increase people's interests, and I'm sure many people will start reading the manga after the anime, because that's typically how these sorts of things go. As always, I do hope that it is a good anime adaptation. I never wish a poor adaptation on any series, but I think there's a lot of really interesting potential with the series and how it is adapted. But definitely one for people who are interested in stories about the art world and the specifics of following a career in art. For those who are interested in how art is expressed and discussed, coming of age stories about following a passion, whether that is like artwork in the sense of like painting or drawing or sculpting, or even, a sport, or the written word, or whatever, like the passions that we as individuals have and how conflicted we can feel at times, improving in that or finding your place within a community. It's very good. I highly recommend it. definitely check it out. We have volume 11 of Land of the Lustrous by Haruko Ichikawa. I haven't read this one. I kind of been putting it off because I know it will make me cry. This is a sci-fi, psychological horror thriller. Oh god, it just dystopia. Oh my god, it's everything. It's everything, and if you've only seen the anime, get the manga because oh my goodness, it's crazy. Land of the Lustrous continues to be a work of art. It's one of the series that I can strongly say is something that even outside of the medium of manga and comics in general, holds up as something that can be critically analyzed, acclaimed, whatever the case may be. It reminds me, the way that the story presents itself, the way that the story unfolds, the conflict with the characters and their understanding of the world and the understanding of themselves and what it represents and how it relates to us as the reader is so perfectly done. My closest comparison insofar as like it being art would be, of course, the other series that I call like actual art, which is Descending Story Shougen Roku Rakugo Shinju, which have sort of similar themes. I mean, very incredibly different series, like just polar opposites with setting, with just characters, but themes of self-discovery and identity and your place in the world and purpose are very similar, actually. Land of the Lustrous. I've also done a podcast episode on this with my co-host Ray from Whimsical Pictures. We also had a wonderful guest, Tales, at Tales of Color, where we spoke about the series at length, many of the characters. We answered some questions we got as well. It's so good. And if you're not reading this series, I would suggest that means that you're missing one of the best series currently being released. Just kind of full stop. Of course, like with everything, it's not going to be for everyone, but I do think that if you're someone who values comics as an art form, if you're someone who values kind of comics as an expression of story and art, then you should definitely try this series out for yourself. It's very good. We have volume 6 of Perfect World by Rie Aruga, or 7 actually, volume 7, not 6, which means that we are quickly closing the oh my god, I can't talk, I guess. Closing the gap from what I read digitally. This is a romantic drama about two young people who reconnect at their 10-year high school reunion, which back in high school they sort of knew of each other. The girl had a big crush on the guy who is the head basketball, like he's the basketball captain or star or something. But after reconnecting, she discovers that in the 10 years since they met, he was in a accident. I think he was hit by a car riding a bicycle, and has gotten a spinal injury, which now has made him a paraplegic. He now uses a wheelchair as daily use. And their relationship, their romantic relationship, the strains of on a relationship of a physical disability, the way that able-bodied people kind of interact or perceive disability, especially physical disability, and the ableism within society, and also I think I've said it before in regards to the series, I think it's quite well balanced in having multiple characters who use wheelchairs, multiple perspectives on it. I do think that it handles a lot of the unglamorous parts of disability. It's never used, his being in a wheelchair is never used as just like a gimmick. It's not just a easy shorthand or point of interest for him. It really highlights, you know, the different aspects that having or being paraplegic has on an individual, and the different needs that, you know, that calls for, and how that can affect not only the person who is disabled, but their relationship with themselves, their relationship with others, and how it may affect all sorts of relationships, romantic and otherwise. It's very, very good. I think done in 12 volumes. I want to say 12. Maybe it's 11. I don't really remember. But it's very good, and I can't wait for the rest of it. I've read up to 10 digitally, so once we're past 10, well, it'll be in completely new stuff for me. Then we have 2 volumes from one of my favorite romance series being released right now, and that is Sweat and Soap Volume 8 and Volume 9. Oh my goodness, these come out so quickly! They are released so quickly! I think there was literally like 4 weeks between these 2 volumes. They came out in basically the same month. This is the story of, you know, a young couple in their mid-20s, mid to late 20s. They're really the first serious relationship for the two of them. And the trials and tribulations and, you know, things that they get up to, the ways that they think about their relationship with each other, the ways that they grow and compromise and learn and adapt, and how, you know, how they evolve from there. It's super good, you guys. I say this with every volume. It's super good. It's one of the best depictions of like a healthy relationship, a couple who communicates for the most part with each other. Although this volume 9, there's definite lack of communication there, which I think will be confronted and resolved, hopefully, in volume 10. It's only an 11 volume series, so we are very close to the end. And I love this couple. I love their friends and family. I think it's just a really wonderful depiction of a healthy, mature adult relationship that takes all the steps to address like what is important in relationships and how these characters, you know, find their place with each other, their comfort with each other, and the evolution of their relationship over the course of these 11 volumes. If you're looking for a good romance, pick up Sweat and Soap. Despite the title and despite perhaps the initial description, it's not like super fetishy. It's not super gross or anything. I would, highly recommend it. It's sort of in a similar vein of something like Mysterious Girlfriend X, where there's an element of like unusual, somewhat fetishistic things in there. With Mysterious Girlfriend X, it was spit. In this, it is sweat and like scent just in general. But the way that, or what those things represent in the series are not inherently just like, it's not lurid, it's not creepy, it's not gross. It's presented in a very calm and rational way. And if you can get past the initial like, oh, that's not my fetish, I think you can really, you gain a really strong story. And I will say also that, like, this series in particular, it discusses fetish, mild as it is, in a really rational, adult way, without kind of otherizing it or making it seem like this super shameful thing. It's just an aspect of personality and preference and interest. But yeah, Sweat and Soap. Give it a read if it sounds like something you're interested in. Kodansha titles, I got 3 volumes of this series. Ooh, this one still has a price tag on it. I am taking that off right now. But this is 3 volumes that I needed to catch up with this series. I've been following it digitally through various means, Crunchyroll, and now I don't know. Well, I still follow it through Crunchyroll. I don't know if like Azuki or that have this series on there. I would presume so. All of the Manga and all of those, Kodansha is pretty good about having majority of their simulcast properties on there, or titles on there, I should say. But this is a currently ongoing series from a much beloved creator, although this is very different from his other more notable series. I'd argue. I'd also say, personally, it's my favorite of his titles, just because I like the setting, I like the characters, I like the just premise more so than some of his previous works. But this is Wave Listen to Me. So we have volume 3, which looks like so. We have volume 4, and we have volume 6. So I do not yet have volume 5, but I would expect that. I did order it ages ago, but I was able to actually get these particular volumes from a local comic store here, so I cancelled my online orders and just bought them there. This is the story of a woman who, after complaining loudly whilst drunk about her life, is given the opportunity to host her own radio show, and so she does that. And it's about the radio and broadcast industry, sort of the smaller independent shows, stuff that isn't just like news bulletins or comedy, features or whatever else, talkback radio. I really enjoy this. I haven't seen the anime, so I can't speak to the quality of that, but this is Hiroaki Samura's most current title, which most people probably know from Blade of the Immortal. He's had other stuff as well, but I think this really balances a lot of very strong elements of his story writing. It really captures the humor of his work, his strong female characters. There's not like overtly gory action like in Blade of the Immortal, but it still does feature quite a bit of action, more so than you might expect. And I just really appreciate how much of a hot mess Minare is, because, man, I feel that, honestly. She feels very realistically messy. She's not inherently a good person, but she's trying her best just to keep trucking on, as it were. Wave Listen to Me is definitely one I would recommend you try if you have not. And yeah, if you haven't given it a shot, I would encourage you to do so. For the quote-unquote normal manga, we have another series that I was catching up with on the physical releases. I've been following this one digitally for a long time. Another one that got a recent anime adaptation, which I have not seen, so I can't talk to the quality of, but it is one that I do enjoy, and that is To Your Eternity by Yoshitoki Oima, the same creator as A Silent Voice. So we have Volume 10, Volume 11, Volume 12, and Volume 13. I think 14 has also been released in the time since I've picked these up, but I got them in the Madman sale, so I just got them having seen them in order to catch up. This is the story of a unusual creature individual who it's kind of hard to explain. Originally the implication is that they came from space, and from there, through the power of mimicry, has slowly evolved into a more human-like form. They are ageless and immortal, but due to just how, the realities of that and how they've interacted with people over the course of their many, many long years on the Earth, they've slowly evolved and changed and been affected by the people around them and the experiences that they've had over the course of their life. This is another one that I follow with the Simulpub, the digital release. I really like it. I personally like it a lot more than A Silent Voice. A Silent Voice isn't bad, but I think it has a lot of flaws. I think it gets lost in its own messages a bit, and it's quite confused, and ultimately a lot of elements regarding the forgiveness aspect when change and hasn't really happened in that series really irked me. So yeah, I have some actual personal issues with how that is handled, but it is a very popular series. It's a very strongly evocative series. It's not the worst thing ever. I do find this one, although more fantastical, some of the emotional journeys a lot more genuine. I think that Fushi, or Ima, I never remember what it is in the print manga, is a really interesting character to follow, and their interactions with all of the many people they've had and interacted with over the course of their life is very interesting. Where the story is as well, which currently modern day, is such it's really interesting to see how this series has developed over the course of these last 13 volumes. And I think it's got a lot more potential to end at the point where to end at the point where it's a bit more easy to sympathize with, empathize with. The characters are all very strong, even again if they're not necessarily good people, quote unquote. And this particular series is quite it follows quite strong arcs, character arcs, which all build off of the previous, which of course I guess mimics or should mimic human experience, wherein you learn from your past experiences or your past mistakes and choices or successes impact how you deal with those things later on in your life or when you come across them again. To Your Eternity is very, very good. It's one of the more interesting kind of sci-fi fantasies out there right now. Probably one that a lot of people are aware of, not only because of Oima's previous success with The Silent Voice, but of course with the new anime adaptation. It's just been nice to catch up on this one. BL, we have one title from Tokyo Pop. This is a single volume collection called Would You Like to Be a Family by Koyama. This is a sort of teenage ranged, mildly spicy, not really, book. 3 different short stories. Main one, titular story, is about 2 co-workers, one who has a young son who obviously grow closer and ultimately kind of start a little family unit of their own, which is really sweet and domestic. The second is about a teenage boy maybe he's a college student, I don't really remember, who, after kind of running into a situation with his older brother, ends up falling for his brother's friend, because I think his brother was dating this guy and they broke up. There's some stuff going on, but so it's a relationship between this guy and his brother's ex-boyfriend, something. And then the third and final story is about 2 college students. One who, a lot of the focus and a lot of the characters, or one side of each of these couples, really has kind of an aloof personality, doesn't quite know how to interact with people, a bit standoffish. I think Koyama might like that in their characters and in their relationship dynamics. But it was good. I'm a big sucker for domestic kind of little family units, queer folk raising kids. I like it, and it was another decent entry into Tokyo Pop's catalog of BL titles. If it sounds like your thing, check it out. It does. The second story has a little bit, is a little bit explicit. The rest of it, I don't think has anything explicit in it, aside from, kissing. But yeah, so if it sounds like your thing, check it out. We have some debuts. First up is the first of a 3-volume series, which is Bad Boys Happy Home by Shuwa and Hiromasa Okujima. Okujima is the artist, quite well known for shonen manga, I believe. And this is the story of 2 delinquents who kind of just start living together after the blonde keeps asking this other guy to fight him, every afternoon. He starts picking fights against this other delinquent who's just living in the park as well, basically homeless. And so, that's how they know each other. But when the blonde realizes that this other guy is just living in the park, he offers him a place at his apartment, and so they start living together. And it becomes obvious over the course of the series that there's a reason why this guy, why both of these guys are in the particular positions that they are, why one is living by himself in an apartment despite being a high school student, and why the other is homeless and living in a park. It's very good. Very, very good. I enjoyed it a lot. It's quite explicit, although it's censored in like kind of the most hilarious way. Oh, Japan. Um it's good. I look forward to volume 2. We've seen a lot of development over the course of just this first volume in regards to their relationship. It'll be interesting to see how that shifts in the next 2 volumes, but I am definitely looking forward to it. Other Sublime debut for this month is volume 1 of Black or White by Sachimal. This is the story of 2 up-and-coming actors who are kind of polar opposites on the screen, but secretly have a relationship with each other that they, can't let anyone know because, they're celebrities and celebrities aren't allowed to date, and oh gosh, this is especially not, whatever. It's good. It's good. I didn't realize that, I knew that this was still ongoing, but I didn't realize that this was already like 6 volumes in Japan. It's quite long. But I enjoyed it. A little bit spicy, but I did like these characters quite a bit. There's a certain character dynamic that won't necessarily be everybody's cup of tea. Jealousy and I don't know if possessiveness is quite the right word, but maybe the insecurity of having the person you care about in the public eye is quite a strong theme, especially in this first volume. So if you're particularly sensitive to story where there is like jealousy going on, kind of an irrational jealousy, then maybe this one isn't for you, but I did like it. Strong start to kind of a longer series, new coming from Sublime. So we have the continuing Sublime manga, volume 2 of one of my favorite series coming out from Sublime right now, and that is Madoc, or M-A-D-K, by Ryo Suzuri. This is an eroguro featuring demons, a human boy who summons a demon in order to live his dark fantasies, his most twisted desires, and after being taken to be like in the demon realm himself, we're seeing how he's gaining power in order to, I don't know, get revenge against the demon that he summoned, or gain control of the demon that he summoned. Oh, Maddox, so good! It's certainly not for the faint of heart, I will say. It's certainly not a title for everyone. This isn't soft and fluffy and sweet and domestic. It's none of those things. It is beautiful, but it is twisted, shocking, very upfront eroguro, which is erotic, gore, if that makes sense. Extremely erotic, extremely violent, but, I don't know. So it's sexualized violence, if that makes sense, but not in the way that BL normally is. As a big eroguro fan, I was already going to try this one out. I was really excited when they announced this, or when Sublime announced this, and man, oh man, it just continues to be so good. So good. The story is really intriguing. It's just overwhelmingly really beautiful, really captivating. Monster lovers, and etc., this is your jam, probably. I really like all of the demonic designs of this series as well. It's just super good. It's super good, and I cannot wait for volume 3. Yeah, this is certainly maybe a dark horse of not the publisher, but like an actual dark horse of Sublime's catalog. It's not, again, not going to be for everyone, but for those who it's for, it is exactly perfect at what it's doing. So yeah, check it out, give it a try, or avoid it completely if it sounds like absolutely not your thing. But I would actually encourage you to try it if you're even a little bit morbidly curious, because although it deals with a lot of very, very dark themes, it does have just such a captivating atmosphere, and it really hooks you into the story very, very quickly. Yeah. Matic. I got the 3rd volume, most recent volume, of Sasaki and Miyano by Shoharu Sono. This is a yen press title about 2 high school boys, one who's a big furanshi, the other who likes him and kinda doesn't really know how to handle that, just wants to spend time. Oh, it's really cute. It's really cute. These 2 awkward boys and their shared love of BL, but also of each other, maybe. Our main character, the furanshi BL fan, isn't quite sure how he feels, but his friend, the senpai, is very, very strong on his feelings and opinions, and he just wants to spend as much time as he can with the boy that he likes, and it's really sweet. Yeah, I mean, this is I really like the series. It's very sweet, very wonderful. I think it's getting an anime adaptation, maybe. But as a yen press title, it's on the pricier side. The volumes for this are so expensive, and they're super little as well. Skinny little things. But, you know, so maybe if you are wanting it, just wait till it's on sale somewhere, because you don't necessarily want to be spending full price, yen press price for the series if you don't have to. Last but certainly not least for my manga, well, I guess kind of manga, BL stuff, this is a series that, okay, so a bit of a setup here. This series, the first volume, maybe 2 volumes, were released by 801, which I think was a DMP imprint offshoot. I don't really remember. And oh boy, they're like 10 years ago, right? A long time ago. And I remember reading a review and being like, whoa, that's not really sounds like my thing, because I was young, and also like the first volume of this series, the first book of this series, is like full on, man. There's every trigger warning pretty much. It's full on. So preemptively, I will say that. And then I was like, I saw one of my mutuals posting about this series just recently, and I was like, oh my god, that resurfaced a memory from a decade ago. What the hell? So I went to go see, and I was like, didn't that get dropped? Is that and I wasn't really too certain about the specifics of this release, but I'm glad that I looked it up. So I was able to check in on the official website for this duo, these creators, and it was just in time for me to pick up the reprints of some of these volumes, and I will tell you as to why. So the person who was talking about this is someone who I have very similar taste with, and also I'm like, you know what? It's been 10 years. I'm a big girl. I read a lot of way more fucked up stuff than I did as a small child of 18. I'll give it a shot. I don't like I've read so much messy BL in my years. This ain't nothing. There's nothing that can shock me. I have weathered the many different storms of being a manga fan, right? Like, if I can read Berserk, if I can read Madoc, this is nothing can faze me. And I had a vague memory of this, and I don't think the timing's quite the same, but my memory of the review that I read and the setup was it reminded me a lot of, like, Hannibal. So I was like, okay, this is probably going to be like a similar sort of, I've never seen Hannibal. I'm not into Hanagram because I literally have never seen it. It's also not, like, typically something I'm interested in. But I was like, I can understand why this is popular if that's the dynamic, because don't you folks out there try to pretend like Hannibal fans don't exist. I know they do. I have witnessed them. They are out there, and there's way more than you think. So I was like, I will try this. Anyway, sorry, this is a long lead up. But this series is In These Words, Guilt Pleasure by Togakyu and Kichiku Neko. They're a Taiwanese duo, although they're based in the US. We have Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. The series is completed in the, like, doujin releases, the shorter chapter releases, at, like, I don't know, like 21 chapters. These collect the first 16 chapters, so there's one more of the collected books for them to release. I believe. That was my perception. I'm pretty sure that's correct. And one of the things about these books is that sometimes you can get, like, odd ways that the speech bubbles and that look, because like, there's a lot of space around there, and that's because the, like, actual doujin itself is bilingual. It's in both English and Chinese, Mandarin, I believe. So, anyway, read the first volume and was like, yep, this is pretty much what I remember from that review. Just like every trigger warning. The setup, for those who don't know, these are our two main characters. This is our main character. He is a psychologist. It's set in Japan. There is a serial killer on the loose who has been, killing people the last 3 years, has 12 victims, and the police bring in this university professor who's a psychologist. He has, background he had training in the US, so they bring him in to the case to help build a profile, and ultimately through that profile and through his plan, they were able to catch the criminal. Now, in a Hannibal-esque way, he is the killer has said, the serial killer has said that he's willing to, confess to his crimes, blah blah blah, but only to this psychiatrist. So they, there's this whole elaborate thing where they're in, like, a secured house in the middle of the nowhere. One of the big things is that the police haven't made it public that there's a serial killer, or didn't for a very long time, in order to, like, keep the peace, as it were. But whilst this is all happening, our main character is having extremely vivid memories and dreams, recollections, wherein he is is like in the place of the victims, and so there's like something going on there. And so as the audience, you're like, oh man, there's more to what's going on that's going on. Extremely explicit, lots of sexual violence in this book, especially the first one, second and third as well. It is dark, like this does have dark themes. Obviously there's a serial killer in this who murdered a lot of people, and there's also other stuff going on. Holy moly. Okay, partway through, yeah, so volume 1 I was like, okay, this is definitely like the Hannibal setup, where, you know, I don't know if I'm not super keen on like super toxic relationships like this in a romantic, like I don't really seek that out in my BL or romance media, which longtime watchers would know, but I do find it interesting. Like I think it's a pretty interesting setup, and you know, whatever. Volume 2, oh my god, there's the biggest M. Night Shyamalan twist. And there's obviously like something going on. And so to a certain extent, like you can guess things, but then also there's just a twist. There's a twist and I was not expecting it. And I was like, dang, wow, that reframes everything. And then so, yeah, if you're worried about like the relationship, the main relationship, between the characters and being like, oh, I'm not into anything that's super toxic, you don't have to worry, basically, is what I'm saying. But yeah, so super duper explicit. I'm not just gonna like casually flip through, but I will show you some of the art because it is lovely. It really sets the atmosphere for the comic. I would also say that if you're wanting like uncensored sexual stuff, then you will probably be very happy with this because there's plenty of that. Really lovely. Like all of these releases have really lovely, I don't know if that's quite the right word, but like beautiful painted artwork at the front. Really nice edition of with, you know, slipcover and extra comics and things. Very in line with like a Japanese release. It's good, and I'm happy to report that this like actually surprised me, and I'm super interested in finishing it as well. I'm like, oh, now I gotta read it, and I could buy the rest of the chapters bilingually, but that would be a dumb decision because 1, there are different sides to this, 2, they're like bilingual, and 3, I can be patient. I know I can. But I kind of also just don't want to be patient. But yeah, give it a try, even if volume 1, well, if you can handle the premise and the setup and how volume 1 deals with it and presents it, then it's well worth your time. If you're a fan of something like Hanagram from Hannibal, or what's that one Korean webtoon that everyone was like, it was very popular on Tumblr and then it kind of got cancelled because it was so problematic and everyone's like, that's the point. I don't remember what it's called. People are gonna be like, it's this, how are you so dumb? I don't remember and I never read it. So the one with the guy who's the stalker. Well, they're both kind of stalkers. Anyway, not good. Not a healthy relationship. If that's like normally your jam, then this isn't really out. it's not really that, but the first part of it very much plays to that. And yeah, I think that the overall, it's really compelling. If you're into, like, just darker, if you don't have a lot of issues with a lot of the darker, hyper violent or violently sexual stuff in BL, this is really, well, I mean, like, if you could handle the early stuff of Madoc, it's probably more visceral in this, just because it removes the inhuman aspect of Madoc, wherein, like, demons are doing a lot of that stuff. But, or if you're just kind of morbid and you don't care, if you're as desensitized to things as me, then maybe give it a try. It's very good, and I look forward to finishing it. To light novels, and I have a whole big stack, namely because my sale order came in and I got a whole bunch of volumes from one particular series, and yeah, so although I do have the first part of the series, I wanted to get the rest, or a lot of what I could, on sale, just because I knew I would probably be reading it and wanting it, and so getting it at a little bit of a discount, is always a good thing. So first up, we have Volume 9 of Sword Art Online, which is Alicization Beginning. So obviously this is for some of the more recent anime adaptation. I haven't seen any of Alicization for Sword Art Online anime, so I'm making assumptions here. And then we have Volume 11, which is Alicization Turning. Don't recognize any of these characters. Volume 12, which is obviously the one after 11, which is Alicization Rising. Volume 13, which is Alicization Dividing. Volume 15, Alicization Invading. Volume 16, Alicization Exploding. Volume 18, Alicization Lasting. And Volume 19, which is Sword Art Online Moon Cradle. So I presume between 18 and 19, this 18 is probably the last of the Alicization arc, and Moon Cradle, the start of a new arc / game / whatever. Again, I have not seen any of the Alicization anime, so I really can't speak to the quality of the adaptation. All I know is about, like, Yujiro and a couple of the other new characters, and I am keen to watch it. I do have part of the anime on disc, so I should get to watching that sometime soon. But all of these were on sale at Madman, and so I wanted to pick them up. I already had volumes 1 to 6, thanks to previous purchases, and although there's quite a few gaps in what I have now, I do have quite a chunk of the extra volumes, or the additional volumes, that I was needing to catch up. I think it's at 21 or 22 volumes in English currently, so very far behind, especially considering I've only really read 1 or 2 volumes of Sword Art Online, which is really just the Aincrad stuff. But I do enjoy it for what it is. I think it's, it doesn't have to be brilliant. I think there's a lot of heart to this series that isn't quite captured in a lot of its, stuff that it inspired or encouraged for in the future. A lot of series that kind of like knock off the popularity of Sword Art Online. And so over the last several years, especially the last probably 18 months, over the last several years I've gained a greater appreciation for Sword Art Online, and over the last 18 months I've gained a interest in actually reading the novels for myself, after many years of kind of avoiding them or not having much interest. So it's been nice to return to it and give the series a proper shot. Although, in saying that, this is not the only Sword Art Online light novels that I got. I also, from the same order, got Sword Art Online Progressive Volume 2, which is the rewrite stuff, or I guess from a different perspective. I'm not 100% sure on Progressive. It's Reki Kawahara, the author, kind of going back and fixing some of the problems from his early novels, which I think is a really cool thing that he's done, and shows great growth as an author as well. So we have Volume 2 and Volume 5 as well. So obviously can't really start this one, wouldn't want to start this one anyway, just because of, you know, perhaps spoilers for future events, things like that. But again, these were on sale from Madman, so I decided to pick them up whilst I could, with the expectation that I would, you know, be buying these sometime anyway at some point. So yeah, Sword Art Online, volumes 9, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 18, and 19, and Sword Art Online Progressive 2 and 5. Next is a recent light novel debut that had gotten quite a bit of positive reviews and word of mouth, so I decided to try it based off of that. And this is Spy Classroom Volume 1, Lily of the Garden, by Takemachi, and illustrations by Tomari. This is the story of a group of teenage, high school girls who are the failure students of various spy facilities. This is set in a world where there are two, warring factions, warring countries, and thus spies are a pretty important segment of society. So we're following our main character Lily here, as well as a bunch of other girls, and their mentor, who is the one trying to evolve them or teach them to become crack, spies, and to pull off this really difficult or near impossible plan case. I don't know. I don't remember what the word is. But despite his best efforts and their best efforts, it seems like perhaps everything is for a loss, because can he really turn all of these failing students into, the best of the best? So I am going to talk about spoilers with this particular volume. If you're not wanting to hear that, skip ahead. But ultimately, I probably won't be continuing this series. It was fine. I didn't love it. So yeah, if you're just wanting my kind of initial impressions, then that's that. For anyone who's wanting to stay around for spoiler discussion, my main problem, I don't even necessarily know that this is a problem, but okay, so this book has a twist sort of towards the ending, which is meant to bring kind of the whole story into a new light, is supposed to recontextualize a whole bunch of stuff, which it does. Like, to be fair to it, it does that. it's kind of a turning point where you go, oh wow, like there is actually a trick here, and there is more going on than perhaps first meets the eye, because a lot of these, so we have a group of these girls, 7 of them, and we're introduced to them. There's a color page at the beginning where we have all of these characters and their code names, which they also like never use, which was annoying because I'm like, why include them? But this color page is kind of why I disliked my reading experience with this, because I don't know about other people, but I do actually pay attention to the colored illustrations at the beginning of the book. And so we have Klaus, who's like the trainer, and then these 7 girls, right, who are our spy team. But again, spoilers, so if you're not wanting to know about the ending of this book, we discover that actually there's 8 girls. In order to trick the villain, they kept the identity of one of the girls secret, so that he thought the villain thought that there was only 7, so he wouldn't account for, the 8th mystery girl. And that's all fine. That's not incorrect. I think it was a pretty well-handled twist. But reading the book and knowing the characters' names and seeing how they were described in the novel, there is one character who is described as having blonde hair, right? And she's very prominently featured. We have a couple, segments, chapters dedicated to her. But if you look at this color page, there is no blonde in this group of girls. There's ashy blonde. There's a silver and gray. There's pink. There's black, brown, and red. None of those are said blonde girl in this novel. So the whole time I thought I was going crazy, because I was like, does the author not know that they've accidentally miscounted? Because also the other thing is, like, a lot of these characters do feature prominently, but this girl, the pink-haired girl, like, very rarely shows up, if at all. And so I was like, well, maybe this is meant to be her, but the personality is completely different, so I don't think so. Like, pink hair and an eye patch is a pretty prominent, like, character design. They're all fairly, they're all fairly unique and strong personalities. I would say, though, so basically the whole time I was like, wait a minute, there's an extra girl that's not on this color page. Why? What is this? Is this a mistake? Is this a translation issue? Is this the author just not knowing how to count? What is it? And then obviously when the twist turned out, oh, there's actually 8 girls, it was a big ruse the whole time, I was like, oh, alright. But the kind of hiding that fact didn't work, because, well, I mean, maybe it worked, but it drove me crazy. It annoyed me so much. I was like, what? Am I the stupid one here? What's going on? And I would argue that, considering that characters like this pink-haired girl and this girl especially don't really contribute much, they don't feature a lot in this novel, that rather than have the very obviously blonde youngest girl of the group, who's, predominantly younger than the rest of them, be the one who was like the surprise twist, that these two these two who look fairly similar, who have different personalities but aren't ever really together enough to notice. Having those two be the same entity, quote unquote, or one of the secret girls, namely Glint, I think would be the better choice, would have just been more effective, because that would have actually been a twist, perhaps, or again, just avoid talking about this girl, forget her completely. Because every time she came, she had like 3 lines, and they always felt like, this is definitely a new character. Okay, there's all of these girls are from this color page are in this book, but there's one that isn't on the color page. I'm so confused. So perhaps that's not like actually a failing of the novel, but it was enough to really impact my reading experience. It was enough to really sour me towards how the twist was alluded to. And when it was revealed, it felt less like a, wow, that's a really smart, fun, like, twist and pretty clever and whatever else. And it felt more like, oh my god, that's why I was so annoyed this whole time. I guess I'm not crazy. I feel some validation, but not enough to make up for the fact that the last 2 hours I've been ripping my hair out trying to figure out what's going on. Or hour, not 2 hours. So, yeah. I'm not going to say this is a bad series. It's a pretty fun idea. I didn't necessarily like any of these girls. Like, none of them stood out personality-wise. And I didn't grow, like, emotionally attached to any single character or the group as a whole. And again, maybe that was because I was already soured to this mystery. I do think that the balance between like the comedy and the action was pretty good. I do think that there was a lot of really fun action set pieces. I do think that the relationship that the girls had with Klaus, their mentor, has potential, and I do think that Klaus's like internal conflict was quite good. But yeah, I didn't like this one. Or I wasn't convinced enough by this first volume to continue with it, especially not in print. And I will be finding a new home for this, because it's not worth me keeping around. And it's been a while since I've disliked a light novel, especially one that I buy physically. So it's a little bit of a interesting experience, or an unusual experience, I should say. But yeah, I don't think that this is inherently a bad series. I think there's a possibility that volume 2 really improves on it, of just knowing that, without that dumb twist, or not even dumb twist, but confusingly presented twist, or confusingly hidden twist. That maybe it's better, but I don't know. I just didn't really care enough to keep going. So, yeah, Spy Classroom. Unfortunately, not one I will be continuing. Comparatively, we have another light novel debut that I, again, heard really good things about. Reviews were really positive for, from different people, so maybe that makes more of an impact. Maybe people I trust more, I don't know. But, well, actually, no, I think it was a similar group of folks, but that's really only because there's only a few people that I do follow on social media who do read light novels as well. But that is volume 1 of I Swear I Won't Bother You Again by Reina Soratani and Harukawa. This is a light novel in the vein of something like Tear Moon Empire versus like Baccano, or one of the isekai, reborn into an otome game. This is about a young noblewoman who, after being a terrible person, is, presented with the consequences and dies an early and untimely death. And wakes up in her younger self and decides to, prevent that from happening, swears to become a better person. So, yeah, more so along the lines of Tear Moon Empire versus Baccano. This is also a much more serious work. Again, not really like Tear Moon Empire or Baccano. There is comedy, but really our protagonist is not like the complete idiot. She's socially unaware, but that's more so because of self-preservation and her background and her previous life experiences versus just being completely unable to read a room, and having no social awareness. In fact, she's very highly attuned to, social atmosphere and things like that. So I really loved this one. It was a super quick read as well. Each chapter is very short. There's about 45-ish chapters. Similarly to a lot of light novels currently, this did start as a web novel, so that totally makes sense. But really, considering this was 300-ish pages, I just sped through it, could not put it down. Really, really enjoyed this one. So we follow our main character. What is her name? Violet, who, as you can see on the back here, she's daughter of a duke committed a terrible jealous crime against her half-sister. As she languishes in prison, something unexpected happens. Time is rewound, sending her back to the day her problems began. Armed with the memories of her disastrous first go-around, Violet is determined to live a quiet, unobtrusive life this time. But fate has something else in store. So we have our main character who, you could definitely argue, or you could worry that she's too similar to a lot of these sorts of protagonists. But I think she really stands out in being... Okay, this is not necessarily a fun read in the sense that our main character, yes, she did terrible things in her previous life. Yes, she made bad decisions, and she was mean and awful and rude to her family and her half-sister and presumably these boys that she has known. And so when she returns to get a second chance, she just completely makes a decision that, she will never cause trouble for her sister or her family ever again. She doesn't want to draw attention to herself. She kind of resolves herself to, finishing school and then joining like a convent, so she's not getting in anybody's way. And rather than being like comedic or silly or kind of played to in a similar sense of like Baccano, where it becomes very obvious that it's her own stupidity or unawareness that just keeps her along this track. Violet is deeply has a very deep self-loathing. There's a huge amount of depression, and so it's not a funny series in the sense of like, oh, she's missing all that these people care about her, or she's missing the fact that she's misreading a situation, and isn't that so silly? Yes, she's missing the fact that characters care about her or have an interest in her or value her, but she also that's very much a product of how she's been treated up until this point. So even though she's going, like, having her second go around, she's still a teenage girl who, for the majority of her childhood, has been deeply abused and neglected by both of her parents, has had no real support system aside from her personal maid and her really single childhood friend. It's still a little bit up in the air as to how her relationship with her half-sister will go now that things are becoming more evident in the second go around. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the younger sister, the half-sister, kind of falling into these more villainous or unaware behaviors that may have been more so what Violet was doing previously. Yeah, this was really, really good. It also really frames the relationships that she does have, the ones that are important to her, namely her childhood friend and her maid, and how she interacts with them and how they value her and interact with her versus how she interacts with some of the other, like, quote-unquote love interest boys, who again would be more typical, like, love interests. The prince and his best friend, who I think is, I don't know, he's something. He's the vice president of the student council. But also how through her actions and observing her and having to face their own biases and confront parts of their society and parts of their internalized assumptions, and reassessing Violet's character, because they don't, like, not everybody actually, like, loves her and is, like, really obvious about it, and it's just her, like, not realizing because she's so hyper-focused on not dying. There are characters like that, like her, the maid and her childhood best friend. He who really has, unrequited romantic feelings for her, the maid who has really only loyalty to her versus the family at large, versus this prince and his friend and, one of the other boys who doesn't really know her, has known her through social circles and reputation and stuff, but hasn't really had the time to interact with her, and any interactions that they have had in the past have been directly impacted by social standing, by social expectation, and this obviously aren't necessarily a true reflection of her personality. It's so good, guys. Like, it's actually so good. I cannot wait for volume 2. It is perhaps difficult to recommend because of how much, like, really how genuine and overwhelming and heartbreaking Violet's attitude towards herself, that very true to life depiction of depression is in the series. So perhaps, if that is something that might worry you or might affect you, then perhaps, maybe avoid this one. But I really cannot recommend this series highly enough, because I went in with pretty high expectations and they were absolutely exceeded. Just from the get-go, it was blatantly obvious that this was kind of a above and beyond what is typical for this genre. It stands out in a genre and a genre and also kind of a medium that is overwhelmingly flooding the market right now. It doesn't feel like a clone of anything else. It doesn't feel like it's ticking the dots of what is popular in order for it to gain notoriety. It feels very much its own thing, and I immediately really connected and wanted to see the best for Violet, which is the sign of a really wonderful protagonist, but in the way that some manga or light novels have, or anime, or whatever the case may be, movies, etc., where rather than just finding a character cool or inspiring or interesting, you have real genuine empathy for them, and you have the hope and the wish for them to turn out all right, for good things to happen to them. It reminds me a lot of the feelings that I had for the characters in Wandering Sun and Blue Flag, where you want things to work out. You don't necessarily know how that will happen, but you don't want them to be sad, to be still struggling with all of the things that they are by the end of the series. And I hope that, well, I would presume that it would follow similar things with this series too. Highly recommend this book, especially if you're into this kind of royalty, reincarnation, or redo sort of genre. If you're a fan of something like Tear Moon Empire, it is, as I said, much less comedic compared to like Baccano. So if you're looking for just like a carbon copy of that, then maybe don't pick this one up. But yeah, highly recommend you try it if anything that I've said sounds interesting. Now, a continuing light novel series. This is the first volume of this I've gotten in a while. I also don't think I've read the previous volume yet, which is like kind of concerning because I feel like it's been a year-ish since I got that. Maybe not that long, maybe longer. Who knows? I guess we never will. But this is volume 5 of Wolf and Parchment by Isuna Hasekura. New Theory, Spice and Wolf. So this is the second generation of the Spice and Wolf franchise, wherein our main characters, Miuri and Cole, are in a similar way to Holo and Lawrence prior, are traveling around with a different aim than the main series, but the two are traveling together, and it's about their relationship as individuals, and then perhaps also quasi-siblings and whatever else. It's a solid follow-up to the original series, although I would argue that, the original is better, just in the way that if you're wanting like a romantic, economic, more focused series with stronger personalities perhaps, then Spice and Wolf would be my recommendation. But the caveat is that I love Cole. I've loved him since the first series, the original, and he's still a good boy. He's still such a good boy. So, it's been nice seeing him out and about, as it were, older, and having grown from his sort of humble beginnings in the franchise. It's been really nice. Also, the new approach, a lot of the different problems that this series focuses on, whereas in the original it was much more focused on business and economics. This is more so focused on religion and religious power and that impact and influence it has had over the years within communities, and what organized religion has represented historically. It's very, 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 very good. One English graphic novel release. This is an Archaea release, hardcover comic. by AC Esguerra, 80 Days. So look at that cover. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. This is the story of 3 aviators during a war. It is a black and white comic, so although the cover is beautiful and the artwork is beautiful, it's not full cover, as you can tell. The creator is queer. This is also a story that features queer characters and polyromantic, polyromantic relationships. So if that is your sort of thing, maybe check it out. I'm a big fan of like historical or fictional historical stories. This is definitely a setting I enjoyed. I was, even from the announcement, because I found out about this thanks to social media, thanks to Twitter. I'm obviously following the right people on Twitter, because I heard about this pretty much when it went up for pre-order, and I just was captivated by the summary and pre-ordered it on the spot, and I'm very glad that I did. It's a beautiful book, wonderful comic, definitely one to check out if it sounds like your thing. Liar and a fraud. I lied to you all. I completely forgot. I said I got one Western or English language comic. That's not true. I just remembered I also got my hardcover single volume of Vera Green Tea and Laura Muller's Nientel of the Forgotten Spirits, which is a collected book of her comic of the same name. I have the previously kickstarted single issues, and this is a colorful, spooky, great for this time of year, a story about a group of kids during the Day of the Dead and the ghostly girl that comes to visit them on said day. It's interesting, a little bit spooky, a little bit creepy, not, actually terrifying or anything. Beautiful use of colors. I really like Vera Green Tea's comics just in general. She's the writer. And typically collaborates with a different artist for each comic. So I have owned a lot of her single issue stuff in the past. Well, I still own them, including the single issues for these beautiful covers, just all around fun, to the point little story. And I was really happy to support a complete edition of this one through Kickstarter, and happy to have received it as well, obviously. I also got a novel this month. A novel that I actually already owned, to be perfectly honest with you, but I got the hardcover edition. I always like to pick up a hardcover edition of stuff that I enjoy, and I did enjoy this, so I decided to get it whilst I still could. And when I had found a decently priced secondhand edition, it's a little bit beat up, but that's totally okay for me. And that is Brave Story by Miyuki Miyabe. This is a novel, a very long novel, released by Viz once upon a time. I owned the paperback and got it through a Madman sale many, many years ago. This is the story of a elementary school boy who goes on a magical adventure, sort of in order to save a friend who is going through some very major personal family problems, and their relationship with each other, his adventure in this fantasy world, and his coming of age or process of growing up over the course of this book and the events of the story. This is a book that got a pretty, I wouldn't say it's a good adaptation, but it did get a film anime adaptation from Bones, maybe? I can't really remember. I don't think it's Bones. Which, interestingly, got a DVD release and a dub in the UK and Australia, but nowhere else. The US and Canada never got it. And I actually have that DVD film because I do actually really like the movie. It's a mess. The story of it makes really no sense because it chops a huge chunk of all of it out. It jumps around a lot, but it's beautiful. It has a great soundtrack. I do really like the characters. I do like what was included in that film. And whilst I wouldn't recommend it over the novel, I do think that it's an interesting companion, if only for the animation of it, right? There's some weird adaptation choices, but we're not gonna comment on those. I'm not gonna say that, well, it's far from perfect, very far from perfect, but I do think it is worth seeing if you get the opportunity to. But yeah, I mean, it's a book that has been around for a long time. I was very lucky to find this hardcover in pretty decent condition. When was this released? Let's see. Well, not interesting. Nice to see the translator on the front page. So 2007. This book is 14 years old. So if that's any indication of how long it's been floating around, I don't necessarily think this was a great seller for Viz, which is why you can still get the paperback dirt cheap. But if you are interested and if you are wanting your own copy, I would encourage you to do that whilst you still can. But yeah, Brave Story. It's a fun, adventurous, emotional story about a boy and someone he cares about. It's very, very good. That's everything from last month. Quite a bit. Lots of Kodansha stuff. Catching up on things thanks to sales. I did start a couple series, notably BL series, but also, didn't do too badly. Not the largest haul I've had in recent months, so I take that as a win, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions on any of the titles that I spoke about today. Have you read them? Have you heard of them? What are you reading? Anything you like or dislike about your current stack? Yeah. Otherwise, there shouldn't be really anything else that I need to talk about. Recent episode of the podcast has been posted where I and my co-host, talk about Taya Matsumoto titles, which was really fun to do. Anime video of this type has also been posted, so check that out if you're interested in that. My social media links are in the description below as always. You can find me on Twitter at collectingg, all one word, and I'm on there quite regularly, so if you're needing to get in contact with me quickly, then that's the place to go. But otherwise, look after yourselves, folks. Stay safe, stay healthy, get vaccinated, not only for yourself but for everyone else around you. And I will catch you in the next video. Bye till then.